Welcome, you curious deep divers, to a session that really proves something interesting. It shows that even when you're exploring the cosmos, sometimes the advice you get back is, well, strictly about home organization.
It really does, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
grounds things in a very unexpected way.
totally.
Right.
So today we're taking this fascinating and honestly pretty funny deep dive into an unscheduled session from the early days of the Seth material. One of the most significant channeled works out there.
Absolutely. Early days, February 64.
And our topic today is this really strange intersection of psychic energy, physical health, and yes, where you put your
A
refrigerator.
cosmic appliance dilemma.
Exactly. It's this unlikely mix of, metaphysics and pure domesticity. And our mission today is basically to unpack why. Why would this supposedly higher consciousness, this non-physical entity, pause talking about the nature of reality to focus so intensely on moving a fridge?
Right. What's the big deal?
And more importantly, what does this super specific advice tell us and tell you, the listener, about that critical link between how you organize your physical space and, well, the integrity of your personal energetic health, your psychic health, as Seth puts it?
It's a surprisingly deep connection, as it turns out.
Okay, so just the quick admin note first. This deep dive is based solely on the source material from session 30 of the early sessions, book 1 of the Seth material.
Yep. The record shows it was recorded February 27th, 1964, a Thursday, 5:35 p.m.
And we're relying completely on the first-hand notes taken by Jane Roberts and Rob Butts, who Seth called Ruburt and Joseph.
The original channeler and scribe.
And just to be clear, as always, this content is being distributed totally free of charge. You can find it on all major platforms, and it's for educational purposes. We really want to encourage you, the listener, to explore these kinds of expansive topics for yourself.
Definitely. So what really jumps out immediately from the notes for this session is how it happened. It was unscheduled.
Right. Not their usual Tuesday or Thursday night thing.
Exactly. And in the context of the Seth material, these unscheduled sessions, they often carry a different kind of weight. It usually signals something urgent, or maybe a novel piece of insight, that Seth felt needed immediate formal delivery. It couldn't wait.
So what was the urgent cosmic emergency this time?
Well, it was driven by a household item. The context notes, the bits Jane and Rob added around the actual channeling, they tell us that Jane, or Ruburt as Seth called her, she'd been getting these spontaneous flashes from Seth all morning long.
Flashes, like psychic impressions.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And these flashes were totally dedicated to one single, highly specific, and you can imagine, maddeningly mundane domestic problem, the refrigerator they had put in their bathroom.
Wait, in the bathroom? Okay, hold on.
Yep, that's the core of it.
Wow. Okay, imagine trying to go about your day. You're trying to write, maybe work on the next book, and the only thing your higher consciousness contact wants to talk about is where you keep the milk and eggs.
It's incredibly grounding, isn't it? Talk about bringing metaphysics down to earth.
To say the least. It's almost comical.
It was a kind of domestic siege, apparently. Jane was getting these really insistent mental nudges, demands almost, to change the apartment layout. And the specific question, the crucial inquiry that finally led to the formal session, it really shows Seth's frustration with their logic, or lack thereof.
What was the question?
Seth asked, and this is a direct quote from the setup notes, "Why does a small kitchen make a refrigerator sanitary in a bathroom?"
Ooh, that's sharp. A bit scolding even, matter of fact.
Totally. It just cuts right through any attempt to rationalize keeping it there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it forces them to confront the core absurdity. So, okay, let's unpack the domestic setup, because the details here are actually key to understanding the whole drama that unfolds. You really have to picture their living situation back in 1964.
Right. It wasn't just any old apartment.
No. The apartment they lived in had been carved out of a much larger, probably quite grand, old house, and they actually owned 2 refrigerators.
Which was probably a bit unusual back then.
Maybe, yeah. The small one, the necessary one, presumably, was in the actual kitchen, which was, by all accounts, tiny. Very small.
Okay. Standard cramped New York kitchen, probably.
Probably. But the main fridge, the larger one, where they stored most of their food, that was placed in what Joseph, Rob Butts, described as a, get this, very large, an ornate and tiled affair that was once the master bath of the house before it was converted into apartments.
An ornate, tiled, former master bath. Okay, so we're not talking about a tiny powder room with a toilet next to the lettuce.
Definitely not. This sounds like it was a genuinely spacious room. Maybe it even had like fancy tile work. It probably felt more like an extra storage room or a pantry because of its size.
But its history, its structure, its sort of energetic imprint was still rooted in its original function.
Yeah.
Cleansing, elimination, waste disposal, basically.
Exactly. They had the square footage. They misused the functional purpose of that space, according to Seth.
And this is where the very human reaction kicks in, which makes this whole thing so relatable, I think.
Oh, yeah. Jane was not having it. The notes say she strongly disliked the idea of moving this big, heavy fridge into their already tiny kitchen.
I mean, who would? It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Right. And she found Seth's intense focus on this problem almost insulting, like beneath them or beneath him.
And her resistance wasn't just about the physical hassle, right? It went deeper. It was sort of philosophical for her, too.
Yeah, the notes mention Jane worried that maybe this wasn't really Seth at all. Maybe it was just her own subconscious, her own stress about, household chores and their cramped space. Basically, playing tricks on her, using the Seth approach to problems she or we should solve on our own.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
She was worried she was just externalizing a domestic squabble onto her channeled entity.
Exactly. She had this real intellectual rigor about the process, which honestly is part of what gives the Seth material its weight. Even the channel herself is questioning the source when the advice seems too mundane, or maybe too convenient for solving a practical problem.
It's a critical point. That self-awareness and skepticism from Jane is crucial. How do you tell the difference between genuine psychic insight about, say, spatial energy, and just your own internal frustration bubbling up about a badly organized apartment?
It's a fine line. You start taking stock tips from your spirit guide, you might be in trouble.
Right, so Seth actually had to address that specific concern. That distinction was key, and it seems that's why this unscheduled session became necessary. He needed to formalize it.
How did he do that?
Well, the very first thing he does in the session, according to the transcript, is make this formal declaration. It seems designed specifically to reassure Jane, to address her skepticism head-on. He says, and this is a quote from Seth, "This is not to be considered a regular session. You do not have to include it in your official notes unless you so desire."
Okay, wow. So he's giving them an out. He's saying, look, this is off the record if you want it to be.
Precisely. It's like a meta-commentary on the situation. Seth is acknowledging that this advice is so domestic, so practical, it runs the risk of being dismissed by them as, not legitimate Seth material, maybe just Jane's own thoughts leaking through.
So he had to give it the official session stamp just to get them to take it seriously?
It seems that way.
Yeah.
To overcome her intellectual doubts and, frankly, her resistance to moving the heavy fridge.
And apparently he gets kind of defensive about it, too. It sounds like there was some real back and forth happening mentally before the session even started.
Oh, yeah. He admits, speaking through Jane, of course, that Ruburt Jane had been besieging me with protests because your kitchen is small.
Huh. So Jane was basically arguing back at the flashes all morning. But the kitchen's too small, Seth.
Exactly. He's essentially saying, look, I know you don't want to move it. I hear you loud and clear. You keep bringing it up to me mentally.
That's amazing, the dynamic there.
And then Seth tries to smooth it over. He assures them he had no intention of, quote, disrupting your household or suddenly plaguing them with furniture-moving ideas.
Like he's not going to become some kind of cosmic interior decorator overnight.
Right. He says he only intervened because he, quote, was suddenly aware of the condition that needed a remedy. He perceived their setup as psychically unfavorable. And he reassures them these suggestions came all at once and will not keep coming.
So it was like a psychic emergency alert. Red flag in the bathroom.
That's a good way to put it. Think of it like Seth sees the energetic blueprint of their lives, their apartment, their bodies. And suddenly he spots this major leak, a structural flaw in their energy system.
He doesn't care about the paint color, but the plumbing shot.
Exactly. And the flaw was placing nourishment, the fridge, the food right in the center associated with elimination and cleansing the bathroom, even a large ornate one.
Okay, that makes sense. That's the perfect lead-in, actually, because now we get past the sort of funny domestic absurdity and into the core reason why this was such a big deal, the energetic prescription.
Right. Seth pivots immediately. He basically dismisses the small kitchen argument out of hand. Doesn't matter. He states it very plainly. It simply is not physically sanitary or even psychically healthful to keep food in a bathroom.
Okay, so physically sanitary makes sense, obviously, but the key part there is the psychically healthful. That's the kicker.
That's the Seth twist.
Yeah.
He's hitting both levels. The physical hygiene is one thing, but the emphasis on psychic health is what elevates this beyond just common sense cleaning advice. He's arguing that even if that bathroom was scrubbed spotless, surgically clean,
Which, knowing them, it probably wasn't always.
maybe not. But even if it were, the function of the room, its inherent purpose, is fixed in their subconscious minds and in the energetic structure of the space itself.
So the idea of the bathroom contaminates the food energy.
In a way, yes. He acknowledges the whole conversation feels, quote, somewhat ludicrous. He gets that it sounds weird. But he reassures them that change will be beneficial to a rather important degree.
And this is where the tone shifts a bit, right? It goes from slightly funny and exasperated to, well, actually kind of chilling. Because he explains exactly what that important degree involves.
Yes, this is the part that really makes you sit up and pay attention. We really need to emphasize this for you, the listener, because it offers such a specific, almost unnerving mechanism for how the mind-body connection can work, rooted in something as simple as organizing your home.
Okay, lay it on us.
The refrigerator placement, Seth says, is linked directly and specifically to Joseph's health, Rob's health.
Not Jane's, but Joseph's.
Okay.
How?
Through what we have to call the Gumboil connection.
The Gumboil connection. Okay, I'm intrigued and slightly repulsed.
Right. Seth states that Joseph's recurring gumboils, those nasty localized infections, like boils on the gums,
Ugh, yeah. Painful.
those are, quote, directly connected with the proximity of the refrigerator to more personal cleansing centers. And these centers should certainly be divided.
Wow. Okay, stop right there. That is incredibly specific. He's not just saying it's bad energy or it might make you feel off. He's drawing a direct causal line from fridge location to gum infections.
Exactly. This is the huge insight delivered in this seemingly minor, unscheduled session. And we really need to pause and think about the mechanism he's proposing here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seth is asserting that the energetic pollution, what he later calls the entanglement of these opposing functions, nourishment versus elimination, didn't just cause some vague feeling of unwellness. It resulted in a highly specific, localized infection, a physical ailment in Joseph's mouth.
But why gumboils specifically? Why not, I don't know, stomach problems or just general fatigue? Why the mouth?
Well, if we think about it symbolically or maybe energetically,
Yeah.
the mouth is the primary intake point for nourishment, right? It's where food enters the body.
Okay, yeah.
So storing the food, the source of that nourishment, near the center of elimination. According to Seth's logic here, it creates this kind of interference field. The energy of elimination is psychically contaminating the energy of intake before it even happens. And that conflict manifests physically right at the gateway, the portal where pure nourishment should be entering.
So the toxicity of the bathroom's function manifests as a literal toxic infection at the point of food intake.
That seems to be the implication. It's like energetic cross-contamination made physical. The energy associated with a bathroom flushing, releasing, separating waste is fundamentally opposed to the energy of a refrigerator and the food inside it, which represents vitality, intake, assimilation, nourishment.
Okay, that makes a weird kind of sense when
Yeah.
you put like that.
When you force those two fundamentally opposite energetic functions into the same physical space, those energies collide. They interfere with each other. They create a kind of psychic static, a disharmony. And the body of someone living in that space may be the one most susceptible or sensitive to that particular conflict.
Which was Joseph in this case.
Right. His body had to somehow process or express that disharmony. And in his case, Seth says, it manifested as these recurring gumboils.
That elevates this whole thing way beyond just feng shui gone wrong.
Massively. This is the core principle Seth is laying down here. The principle of functional division for optimal psychic and physical health. He explicitly says the physical rearrangement, moving the fridge, will save them both from, quote, psychic difficulties and even physical ills.
So the stakes suddenly jump from like an annoying interior decorating problem to an actual medical intervention prescribed by a non-physical entity.
Precisely. It's a health directive disguised as a furniture-moving suggestion.
So does he lay out any broader rules then? Like, is it just bathrooms and kitchens?
He does. He uses this specific, rather extreme example to illustrate a general principle for creating a healthful psychic environment in your living space. He says, quite clearly, your living spaces should be divided as to function.
Okay. Simple enough.
Simple, but apparently crucial. He emphasizes this isn't just about, common sense tidiness or convenience. It's presented as a necessary law for maintaining energetic integrity.
So keep your functions separate.
Yes, he spells it out. The sleeping room should always be separate. The food preparation center should always be separate. He's establishing clear boundaries for different life activities and their associated energies.
And he points out their mistake was choosing the bathroom for the food.
Yeah, he says bluntly, you just happened to choose the worst possible place. Even though they had the space, that large tiled room, they used it for the wrong function. It seems the intent behind the space, its historical and psychic function, matters more than just the square footage or how clean it is.
Okay. And the ultimate goal of all this separation.
The ultimate goal, and this is the phrase we really need to remember, is avoiding the entanglement of psychic energies.
Entanglement, like the energies get mixed up, corrupted.
Exactly. And this concept, this entanglement, is apparently so important that Seth actually promises right there in session 30 to explain the reasons behind it in much more detail in a later regular session.
Ah, so this was just the emergency bulletin, and the full theory comes later.
Seems like it. The implication is pretty profound, though. It suggests that our physical habits, how we arrange our homes, how we live our lives, actually create tangible energetic structures around us. And when those structures are set up in a way that creates conflict, like nourishment tangled with elimination, the result is disharmony.
And that disharmony, if it persists, can eventually manifest as physical disease.
That's the direct link Seth is making. It ties right back into the core Seth concept of you create your own reality. If your thoughts create your reality, then organizing your primary living space in a way that fundamentally contradicts your body's needs or desired state of well-being, well, that's like a form of negative thought projected onto the physical world.
So the refrigerator in the bathroom was like a physical symbol, a manifestation of an energetic contradiction they were living with.
Perfectly put. It was a physical anchor for psychic entanglement.
And Seth apparently wasn't too subtle about telling them they should have figured this out themselves.
Not at all. That's one of the more humbling and, frankly, quite funny moments for Jane and Rob, these two highly educated intellectual writers. Seth says to them, quote, I should think that with your educations, you should have known this yourselves, and I am quite honestly embarrassed for having to tell you this.
Ouch. Imagine getting scolded by your channeled entity for basically failing Psych 101 of energetic hygiene.
Right. It completely grounds the whole lofty metaphysical discussion in something incredibly basic, almost like spiritual common sense they'd overlook.
It really does provide that perfect mix, though. Cosmic advice delivered with a dose of, seriously, guys, use your heads.
It highlights that these profound psychic truths, these big ideas about energy and reality, they're often reflected, or need to be reflected, in the most seemingly trivial details of our daily lives, like where you put the fridge.
It's like if you can't get your own house in order energetically, how are you supposed to navigate the larger mental or psychic universe?
Exactly. Start with the basics.
Okay, so that really establishes the high stakes, the psychic and physical health implications. Now, let's circle back to the more human side of this. The hilarious resistance element that made the physical act of moving the fridge so difficult for them. It wasn't just the hassle, right? It was the artwork.
Ah, yes, the tree on the kitchen wall. This is where the practical challenges really come in.
So the main material reason Jane, or Ruburt, was protesting moving that big fridge into the tiny kitchen was Joseph's art. Rob's drawing.
Apparently, Joseph, the meticulous recorder of all these sessions, had at some point drawn a tree directly on the kitchen wall in India ink on the yellow paint.
India ink directly on the paint. Oh, dear.
And Joseph makes sure to add a note in the transcript, just for the record,
Yeah.
that this was one of my best drawings.
Oh, you can just feel the attachment there. His masterpiece on the kitchen wall.
It's such a specific, wonderful detail, isn't it? And guess where the only spot in that tiny kitchen was where the large refrigerator could possibly fit?
Let me guess. Right over the tree drawing.
Bingo. Moving the fridge meant completely covering up his cherished artwork, obliterating it from view. So the functional necessity, the psychic health requirement, was literally colliding head-on with personal artistic pride and attachment.
That adds a whole new layer of difficulty. It's not just moving furniture, it's sacrificing art.
And this is where we see Seth's awareness isn't just limited to abstract energy fields. He seems tuned into their aesthetic preferences, their emotional attachments, the things that matter to them as humans.
He doesn't just bulldoze over the tree issue.
No, he actually acknowledges it. He doesn't just mandate the move and ignore the drawing. He actually mentions the tree specifically. He says he happens to, quote, enjoy seeing it when Ruburt makes his twice-weekly journeys up and down the living room floor.
Wait, hold on. Seth, the non-physical energy personality essence, is admitting he watches them. Like, he sees Joseph pacing the floor, and he comments on their wall decor.
Apparently so. It's an incredible little aside, isn't it? It gives you this sudden sense of his proximity, his level of observation. He's not just tuning in for the formal sessions. He sees their daily habits, he sees their art.
And he has opinions about it. That's almost creepier than the fridge advice. Cosmic voyeurism.
It is a bit startling.
Yeah.
But he even goes so far as to acknowledge the tree is a living symbol to Joseph. He gets its importance. He recognizes its energetic significance. It wasn't just random paint on a wall for Rob. It was a meaningful creation.
Okay, so he appreciates the art, he sees its value.
But the energetic law still has to take precedence.
Mm.
The psychic health of the kitchen, the proper functioning of that food center, is deemed more important than the artistic integrity of the wall in that specific spot.
So the verdict is still firm. Fridge moves, tree gets covered.
Yep. The verdict is firm. The refrigerator must be added to the kitchen, and therefore the drawing must be covered. In a way, it's like a symbol of life. The tree has to be sacrificed for the proper functioning of life, the food center.
Wow. Tough call for Joseph.
You bet. But then Seth circles back to his own feelings about this whole intervention, and it's just priceless. His self-awareness about how weird this whole domestic focus must seem.
He brings up being embarrassed again.
He does. He repeats that he is, quote, quite honestly embarrassed for having to tell you this, especially given their intellectual background, their education.
Like, you guys should know better than to make me state the obvious.
Exactly. And this leads to probably the funniest, most revealing line in the whole session regarding the reputation of the Seth material itself. He says, and you have to imagine this channeled voice saying it, I blush to think of your fine professors reading this, and for your sakes, I suggest that it not be sent out with official material.
That is gold. He's worried about their academic street cred. The channeled entity is concerned about peer review for advice about appliance placement.
Isn't that amazing? It's like he knows that if this transcript gets out, the folks at the local college, their intellectual circle, they'll never take Jane and Rob's metaphysical work seriously again. Oh, those are the people whose ghost tells them where to put the fridge.
It totally humanizes Seth in a weird way, or at least shows an awareness of human social dynamics.
It really does. It emphasizes that Jane and Rob were operating in this intellectual world, doing something considered pretty radical or fringe, and this incredibly mundane advice felt like it threatened the seriousness, the solemnity of their whole project.
So Seth had to reassure them again that this wasn't just random nagging.
Yes. He brings it back to the core reason. He reiterates that he only made this suggestion because he was, quote, suddenly aware of the condition that needed a remedy, and that the physical changes, moving the fridge, covering the tree, believe it or not, will save you both some psychic difficulties and even physical ills. Otherwise, I would have made no suggestions.
Okay, back to the non-negotiable point. This was necessary for their health and well-being. End of story.
Pretty much. That's the bottom line he keeps returning to.
So as the session starts wrapping up, the main event, the Great Refrigerator Relocation Mandate, is settled. But Joseph, ever the practical one, sees an opening, right?
He does. Rob Butts, the diligent recorder, quickly slips in a couple more questions. It's like, well, we have you here.
Yeah.
Always try to get a 2-for-1 diagnosis when you've got a direct line to a cosmic entity. Right?
You absolutely would. What did he ask?
He asks a very straightforward question about Jane's ongoing physical issues. Why does my wife's back hurt?
Ah, a common complaint. Wonder what the cosmic diagnosis was.
Well, Seth provides this immediate, very holistic answer that completely bypasses the usual explanations, pulled muscle, bad posture. He goes straight to the energetic root cause.
Which was?
He says Jane's back trouble is primarily a matter of tension, but not just everyday stress tension. It's tension likely rooted in deeper psychic and emotional overflows. And interestingly, he suggests a chiropractic adjustment will doubtless help.
Okay, so tension manifesting physically, treatable with physical alignment. That makes some sense. Does he elaborate on the source of the tension?
He does, and this is really fascinating. He connects her emotional and psychic state, which he describes as sometimes sweeping her willy-nilly, just carrying her way directly to the seasonal cycle.
The seasons. How?
He specifically notes that the transition from winter to spring that year was causing significant chemical, not glandular, but chemical adjustments in her system. Her body was basically struggling to adapt energetically to the massive shift happening in the natural world around her.
So, like, her internal chemistry was reacting to the changing energy signature of the planet moving from winter dormancy to spring's burst of life.
That's exactly the idea. He paints this picture of her being highly sensitive, psychically porous maybe, to these large-scale environmental energy shifts.
Yeah.
Her body, Her system is trying to process that rapid, energetic sweep from winter to spring, and that internal struggle, that psychic effort, is creating resistance that manifests physically as tension in her back.
Wow. That's a truly beautiful and quite intricate explanation for how sensitive humans can be to their environment beyond just allergies or temperature changes.
It really is. He's connecting her inner emotional landscape directly to the macro level, external environment. Her physical body is literally reacting to the planetary energy shift. And he even promises to explore the precise mechanism behind this seasonal difficulty later on, specifically when they get into discussing her past lives.
Past lives. So this sensitivity isn't just random. It might be connected to deeper patterns.
That's the strong implication. The connection to past lives suggests that maybe this vulnerability to seasonal psychic shifts isn't just an arbitrary thing in her current life. It might be linked to older, perhaps historical patterns of existence or experiences that her current self, her current embodiment, is still working through or processing.
That adds layers upon layers. Okay, and wasn't there one more quick health tip thrown in?
Yes. As a final little kicker related to this whole theme of physical alignment and energy flow, Seth adds one more suggestion. It's almost an afterthought, but potentially huge. He mentions that there's a possibility that Ruburt's eyesight may improve with a chiropractic adjustment as well.
Her eyesight. Improved by a back adjustment.
Yeah, think about that connection he's drawing. A mechanical adjustment to the spine, which relieves tension caused by these psychic seasonal energy sweeps, could potentially ripple outwards and enhance something as specific as sensory perception, her vision.
That's a complete system view, isn't it? Linking physical alignment, energy flow, emotional states, the environment, and sensory input like sight. It's all interconnected.
Totally interconnected. No part operates in isolation in this model.
Okay, and how does the session actually end? Does Seth just vanish after the eye tip?
The sign-off is almost as revealing as the fridge advice. It gives us this final peek behind the curtain of the channeling dynamic, and it really shows the stress the humans could put on the entity, or at least on the process.
How so?
Seth basically expresses hope that this whole refrigerator issue is finally settled, so that Ruburt Jane will, and this is another direct quote, stop blatting at me.
Stop blatting at him like a sheep.
Apparently. He continues, he keeps going at me more than I ever keep going at him between sessions, and he's just getting too good at it.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. It sounds like pure exasperated relief.
Totally. It confirms Jane wasn't just passively receiving these fridge flashes all morning. She was actively, mentally arguing back, resisting, debating him, blatting at him. Seth sounds genuinely worn out by the argument.
So the formal session was needed not just for legitimacy, but maybe just to get some peace and quiet, to finally settle the debate.
It really sounds like it. Okay, fine. Let's make it official so you'll stop bothering me about the kitchen.
That's fantastic. Anything else about the ending?
Just one small detail about the timing. Seth signs off by observing, "It is a lovely evening, I see." And Joseph adds a note confirming that this session, which ended around 6:00 p.m. in late February, was indeed held while it was still light out, still twilight, which was unusual for them.
Why was that unusual?
Because their regular sessions, the scheduled Tuesday and Thursday ones, typically didn't start until it was, quote, quite dark out. So the timing itself underscores the urgency. The immediate need for this intervention broke their established pattern and schedule.
It really was an emergency session then, an emergency domestic energy session.
You could call it that.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. What does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to navigate your own life, your own physical space, your own energy? We started with this almost absurd scenario, the cosmic appliance crisis, and we ended up uncovering this really profound teaching on the mind-body connection, environmental energy, and even seasonal sensitivity.
Yeah, the essential lesson, the big takeaway, seems to be that functional separation is genuinely key to psychic health, maybe even physical health. Even though Jane and Joseph were smart, sophisticated, highly aware individuals.
Right, they weren't dummies.
Not at all. But their failure to follow this basic energetic rule, storing nourishment functions, tangled up with elimination functions, apparently created a specific, measurable physical illness, the Gumboils, in one of them.
So the energetic consequence of where they put their fridge was a direct physical symptom. It's startling how tangible that connection is presented.
It really is. It shows us, or suggests at least, that our external environment, our homes, our offices, they aren't just inert background settings. They're active extensions of our internal state, our psychic condition. And if you have the space, Seth seems to imply you have an energetic responsibility to use it wisely, to divide those core functions.
Don't mix the streams, energetically speaking.
Pretty much.
So we really hope this deep dive has sparked some thought for you. We strongly encourage you to explore these topics further for yourself. This whole conversation, remember, stems from that incredible vast body of work known as the Seth material.
Specifically, this is all from session 30 of the Early Sessions, Book 1. And there's just so much more in those books about psychic entanglement, reality creation, health, consciousness. It's incredibly rich.
Absolutely. And we definitely want to give credit where it's due, credit to the Seth material itself, and to the publisher, New Awareness Network, for keeping this essential work available for everyone, researchers, readers, curious listeners like you.
Yeah, they do fantastic work. If you do want to dive deeper into these early sessions specifically and really explore the original context of these amazing conversations between Jane, Rob, and Seth, we definitely urge you to visit the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore.
You can find all those resources, the books, more information, right at sethcenter.com/the early-sessions. That's sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
So maybe the final provocative thought to leave you with today is this. If something as seemingly simple as a refrigerator's location could, according to this source, cause specific physical infections, gumboils, by tangling the psychic energies of nourishment and cleansing,
Yeah.
then what seemingly innocent everyday habits or arrangements in your own life, maybe in your home, maybe even in your workspace, might be creating some kind of unconscious pollution, some subtle energetic interference that could be affecting your long-term mental or physical well-being in ways you haven't even considered.
Where are your functional centers getting tangled up? Is there a psychic icebox lurking in the wrong spot in your own life, maybe manifesting as some low-level persistent issue you can't quite shake?
Something to think about. Where are those entanglements for you?
Definitely something to mull over. We'll let you ponder that until our next deep dive.